Hello, Giants fans, and welcome to a new edition of the Valentine's Views podcast here on YouTube. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Your New York Giants are off to a disappointing 0-2 start to the 2024 season. I don't know if it's going to get any better. The Giants personnel is what it is. The quarterback is who the quarterback is. And the schedule gets tougher from here on out. The first two games were games that we generally looked at as winnable games for the Giants. Didn't turn out that way, which could be the precursor to an awful season for the Giants. We'll have to find out. There is, of course, 15 games remaining to play, so the story of the 2024 season is far from written at this point. And what I want to talk about today are 5 things that I think the New York Giants need to do better in order to turn their season around to at least have a mediocre 7-win season at this point. So honestly, as I go through these things, some of them we've written about at Big Blue View already. Some of them Tony Del Genio and I talked about during our show together on Monday. Listen, I don't know for sure that the Giants can accomplish any of these things. But when I look at what's going on in the first two games for the Giants, these are things that I think the Giants have got to do better if they're going to have a chance to get this season turned around and not have it go completely off the rails. Something that we really don't want to see, to be honest with you. I mean, I know there's folks out there who hope the Giants get the number one draft pick, but at this point, I would rather not suffer through 15 more weeks of completely miserable football. So these are my 5 things that I think the Giants need to do better. Number one is defend the run better. This is something that we have talked about a lot at Big Blue View this week. Nick Filato did a film breakdown of some of the issues with the Giants' run defense. I did a story of my own about the run defense, listing a lot of the statistics about where the Giants stand in the league in run defense and in a lot of other categories at this point in time. And listen, overall, after 2 games, I think the defense has been a bigger problem than the offense. Maybe we should have all seen that coming, to be honest with you, based on new scheme with a new defensive coordinator, based on some of the personnel issues they've got on the defensive line in terms of down linemen and in the secondary, particularly at cornerback. But the Giants have got to defend the run better. Brian Dable was honest on Monday saying that the run fits need to be better, that the tackling needs to be better, that guys need to simply do their own jobs. Defensive captain, linebacker Bobby Okereke said on Monday that one of the things that is going on is people not simply doing their jobs, but also trying to do other people's jobs as well, which means that there's a lack of trust among the personnel that the Giants are using. Maybe there's a lack of trust so far in the scheme being employed, being taught by new defensive coordinator Shane Bowen. I don't know that. Maybe it's still a learning curve for the Giants defenders, but you've got to defend the run in order to get into passing situations, in order to be able to pin your ears back, in order to be able to rush the quarterback. You've got to be able to defend the run to stop these long drives, time-consuming drives. The Commanders on Sunday had the ball 7 times. Every single drive was at least 9 plays. And the Commanders had the ball for almost 38 minutes in that game. So you've got to do a better job against the run. Guys need to simply do their jobs, fill their gaps. set the edge if the run goes wide, tackle when you have an opportunity. There's no reason on 3rd and 1 for a running back like Brian Robinson did on Sunday to break out of a scrum at the line of scrimmage on 3rd and 1 and go 40 yards. That's just ridiculous. And if you watch the game, you see a bunch of other opportunities where guys missed tackles in the hole, and plays went for decent chunks of yardage, and that stuff simply has to stop. So first and foremost, the very first thing, and it sounds simple, but it's not. But the very first thing that the Giants need to do is defend the run better. They gave up over 6 yards a carry against Washington. They're giving up 5.3 yards a carry, which is right near the bottom of the league so far through 2 games. And that simply has to get better. All right. Second thing that the Giants have to do is another thing that we've spent a lot of time on this week at Big Blue View. We've written about it a lot. Tony Del Genio and I talked about it a lot. And that is the Giants have got to stop making unforced roster management errors. They've had 2 games so far this year, and they've done it in 2 games. You can make an argument that the Graham Gano decision that they made on Sunday was the biggest factor in them losing that game. At the very least, straight up, that decision cost them probably at least 3 points, maybe probably 5 points, maybe more than that, maybe 8 points, maybe more. But they missed an extra point. They missed 2 2-point conversions. They had 18 points when they should have had 21. They went for a 4th and 4 late in the game that they didn't convert on a Malik Neighbors drop when they were in clear field goal range with a competent professional kicker that they did not have. It's simply inexcusable for the Giants week after week to make head-scratching decisions about which players to dress. This happened on a couple of occasions last year, and it's happened in both games this year. In week 1, the Giants had punt returner Gunnar Olszewski active after he had missed 4 weeks of practice with a groin injury. In all of that time, the Giants also lost Isaiah McKenzie, who was their second punt returner, guy that was, in a way, competing with Olszewski for one roster spot, but could have landed on the practice squad had he been healthy, and would have been an option for them as a punt returner, kickoff returner. In all that time, the Giants worked out some punt returners, didn't sign anybody. There wasn't another competent punt returner on the 53-man roster. There wasn't even a punt returner on the practice squad. So they really had no option other than Olszewski to return punts. Darius Slayton tried, and that looked ugly. He muffed 1 punt. We've seen guys like Wan'Dale Robinson try to catch punts in practice, and honestly, I've seen enough of Wan'Dale catching punts to know that it generally doesn't go well. They've used Tyrone Tracy back there. At least they've practiced him back there, but he's never actually done it in a game. Eric Gray they saw last year, and the ball security issues are such that they don't want him anywhere near it this year. So really, that was a questionable decision. And the whole thing with Graham Gano was a disaster. You have a kicker who shows up on the injury report with a groin issue. You have a kicker on the practice squad. You have an open roster spot because you're only carrying 52 players on your 53-man roster. You elevate 2 linebackers when you could have simply signed one of them, probably veteran Ty Summers, who's been elevated both games. You probably could have just signed him to the active roster. You could have elevated Jude McAtomney from the practice squad, and you would have had yourself covered. You could have had Gano go out and warm up and see how he felt. And then you could have decided an hour and a half before the game, do we carry both kickers among our 48 active players? Do we activate, do we just activate McAtomney? Do we just activate Gano? You would have had a choice an hour and a half, 2 hours before the game. Instead, you left yourself with no choice. You started the game with an injured kicker. And yes, he injured a hamstring instead of a groin. I know, but you can't tell me that one didn't impact the other. But, regardless, that's a decision that comes back to haunt the Giants and could very well have been the reason why they lost the game. And these unforced roster management errors, whether they're on Joe Shane, whether they're on Brian Daboll, whether they're on some combination of both guys, they have to stop. You have to have contingency plans in place for guys who are entering games at less than 100%. And let's be brutally honest here. The Giants activated or elevated from the practice squad Ty Summers and Tomon Fox. What would have been more valuable to the Giants? The 19 special teams snaps that Tomon Fox played and wasn't noticed at all? Or having an actual kicker. Now, I don't know what kind of game Jude McAtomney would have had, but he's an actual real kicker who's done it before. That's his job. It's what he's trained to do. And somehow I think you could have covered for not having Tomon Fox to cover kickoffs a lot easier than you could cover for not having a place kicker in a game. So again, unforced error, and that's to me the second thing that absolutely has to stop with this organization. Third thing is the Giants' defense, and we keep coming back to the defense. They have to stop allowing the big pass play. The Giants have allowed 7 pass plays in 2 games of 20 or more yards. That puts them 29th in the league. So look, they're not defending the run. They're not keeping pass plays in front of them. They're giving up chunk plays at an alarming rate. And that's a bad recipe. Tay Banks has been okay in 2 games as the Giants' number 1 corner. Gave up a big play against Justin Jefferson, also gave up a touchdown to Jefferson. Had a pretty good battle the other day with Terry McLaurin of Washington. The real issue for the Giants is at the other corner where they've gone through, Nick McLeod. They're using Cordale Flott. Flott gave up a 34-yard pass on Sunday against Washington. Adoree Jackson signed right before the season started. Didn't play well a year ago. Had a big penalty week 1 against the Vikings that cost the Giants 30-some-odd yards on a 3rd down and led to a Minnesota touchdown. Was on the field for only 14 snaps on Sunday against Washington. So the Giants at this point don't really have a cornerback 2 who they're comfortable with. And I don't know, it's not just one player, obviously, but you can't continue to give up these chunk plays, these deep shots down the field. The Giants are also, it's not just the deep shots down the field. You watch some of these 3rd and long situations that the Giants are in, and they're giving up lots of catch and run yardage. They're giving up underneath plays that are turning into first downs. They're giving up, runs out of the pocket by the quarterback that are turning into first downs on 3rd and 13. And I guess we're actually going to add a 6th thing here, because I'm going to add something that wasn't on my original list, and that is these self-inflicted wounds on 3rd down. The Giants have given up 4 first downs in 2 games on 3rd and long situations. I think at least 3 of those were 3rd and 10 or more. And they've given these up via penalty. I looked it up the other day, and each one of those 3rd down penalties where the Giants would have forced a punt, gotten the ball back, each one of those has led to a score. Minnesota turned 2 of those into touchdowns for 14 points in a game that they ended up winning, 28-6. 14 points makes it 14-6, makes it a game where maybe the Giants can figure out a way to make a play late and tie the game up or win the game or whatever. But those 2 touchdowns take the Giants completely out of contention in that game. Again on Sunday in week 2 against the Commanders, 2 3rd and long penalties give Washington first downs. The Commanders drive down and turn those into 2 of Austin Seibert's 7 field goals in a game that the Giants wind up losing by 3 points. So again, self-inflicted wounds by the defense. All right, so that's actually 4 things. And the 5th thing on my list is the Giants have got to get production from edge defenders Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns. Defensive coordinator Shane Bowen has been clear that this defense is built around those 3 players, that those 3 players, meaning Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, and Dexter Lawrence. Excuse me for not naming all 3 when I started this little section, but Lawrence has been fine. The other 2 guys, not so much. And Bowen has been clear. Those 3 guys have to produce. Kayvon Thibodeau had 11 and a half sacks last year. My view of Kayvon is that I think Kayvon thinks he's better than he is. I think he thinks that he's a superstar pass rusher, and he hasn't really shown it yet. He's 11 and a half sacks last year, but he's not a game in, game out, down in and down out dominant pass rusher. His pass rush efficiency scores and his pass rush win rate scores that Pro Football Focus and other places track show you that down in and down out, he is not a consistent pass rusher. But whatever the analytics say, he's the 5th overall pick in the 2022 draft. He's the first player Joe Schoen drafted. He's a guy they intended to build around for a long time. He's a guy they intended to have lead their defense. He needs to do that. He needs to show up at crunch time. He needs to show up and be an impact player on a weekly basis. And the same with Brian Burns. The Giants traded a lot of draft capital to go out and get Burns this offseason. They gave him a massive contract. They looked at pass rush as a thing that they absolutely had to address, and they looked at in getting Brian Burns and pairing him with Thibodeau. They looked at that and thought, now we have a pair of fairly young, dynamic edge defenders who we can build this defense around and who can really, really put the screws to opposing quarterbacks. And it hasn't worked out that way. The Giants had 5 sacks on Sunday, 5 sacks of Jaden Daniels, and all of those came from defensive backs or inside linebackers. A lot of them came after Daniels had broken the pocket and somebody made a break on him or was able to tackle him before he crossed the line of scrimmage in a scramble attempt. But in addition to Dexter Lawrence, who is absolutely an all-pro, all-world defensive tackle, a guy who consistently does things that a 340-pound man simply shouldn't be able to do, Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns have got to pull their weight on this defense. They have got to be what the Giants expected them to be, what they need them to be in order for this defense to be successful. There's too many holes in other places. As Bowen has said, this is where the resources are allocated. The resources are allocated to Dexter Lawrence, to Brian Burns, to Kayvon Thibodeau, to Bobby Okereke, a number one pick they spent on Tay Banks. Those guys have got to be players, period. But especially at this point, Thibodeau and Burns. And if they're not going to be players, then the Giants defense is going to continue having a hard time getting off the field. And the final thing, listen, the Giants offense was okay on Sunday against the Commanders. The Giants had the ball 7 times. They scored 3 touchdowns. They drove into scoring position 2 other times. So 5 of 7 possessions, they put themselves in position to score. They punted twice. And I think NFL teams would sign up for that on a weekly basis. Getting the ball 7 times, putting yourself in position to score 5 times. But the Giants came away with only 18 points. They scored only 6 points in week 1. You're not going to win games in the NFL averaging 12 points a game. And granted, some of the points they did not score on Sunday against Washington were because of their kicking situation. But if you're going to win games in the NFL, you really have to get to the midpoint of scoring in the NFL, which is usually 23 to 24 points. You've got to get into that territory if you're going to consistently win games and consistently have opportunities to win games. Brian Daboll took over the play calling of the offense to try and help make that happen. And the Giants took steps forward on Sunday against Washington. Daniel Jones played much better. He played competent football. The Giants blocked well for him. They gave him time time to throw the ball. There were lanes for Devin Singletary to run in. He gained 95 yards on 16 carries. But whether it's taking better care of the ball in terms of not fumbling it, which Devin Singletary did, in scoring territory, the big drop by Malik Neighbors. These are just mistakes that the Giants don't have enough talent to overcome. Their margin for error at this point is very small. When they have self-inflicted wounds of any kind, from missed tackles to drops to open receivers who get missed, to fumbling the ball, to missed field goals, missed extra points, all of those things are going to be critical, and they're going to add up to losses for the Giants. But whatever the reason, however they get it done, the Giants need to score more than 18 points a game. They need to get into the 20s, preferably up to 23 or 24, as I said, to get themselves into position to consistently win games. That's going to be difficult this week against the Cleveland Browns, who have one of the best defenses in the league. But on a week-to-week basis, you have to figure out a way to get there. Maybe if Daniel Jones continues to play the way that he did Sunday against the Commanders, that will be a big help for the Giants getting there. The one thing that the Giants took some deep shots against the Commanders and didn't hit any. Hopefully, as they keep taking those shots, or if they keep taking those shots, they'll hit some of those. Maybe they can get Jalen Hyatt involved and get a deep shot to him on occasion. Take a little bit of stress off of Malik Neighbors, but somehow, some way, the Giants have got to get more points out of their offense. Anyway, Giants fans, those are my 5 things that the Giants need to do. Please stick with BigBlueView.com for all of your Giants coverage and for all of our previews, in-game, and post-game analysis of Giants versus Browns in week 3. Thank you, as always, for watching. Please stay safe out there. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.